64 days and 2,340 miles after leaving Southampton, we had brought Venture 2 to Iceland by way of Scotland and the Faroe Islands. From our base in Reykjavik, we hired a car and set out to explore the country. Many imagine much of Iceland to consist of volcanoes belching steam and ash, but in reality, the valleys are filled with lush and beautiful farms. Although not originally native to Iceland, lupins are early colonizers of less fertile areas. The best way to see the country is to head off the beaten track. For good reason, most routes are designated for four-wheel drive only, and there are stiff penalties for venturing on them with a conventional vehicle. There are plenty of rivers to ford, and we rented a small four-wheel drive Suzuki, which served us well. Fast-flowing streams carry silt from upstream before leaping over cliffs in a series of wonderful waterfalls. The largest in the south is the mighty Gullfoss. Near the town of Vik, meaning harbour, fields of wild lupins reach out towards bizarre rock formations. These, along with black beaches and fleshy angelica, bring to mind scenes from Jurassic Park. The church at Vik looked very different just 3 months earlier, when this area caught the edge of the fallout from the volcanic eruption. We saw plenty of evidence of the chaos wrought by the volcano, and we headed into the affected areas to see some of the destruction for ourselves. There were many streams and rivers to ford, and a modest breeze lifted the fine volcanic dust from the surface, reducing visibility to almost zero.
This is fun. It's dust. Wherever you feel comfortable, stay there.
The ash had the gritty consistency of carborundum, but was as fine as talc, making it hard to follow the track and eventually forcing us to turn back. Work was still in progress to repair the levees, which had been swept away by snowmelt from the volcanic fires. Glacier walks are among the many opportunities for exploration in a monochrome landscape which oftentimes resembled the surface of the moon. In Geysir, steam floats above the wildflowers, and boiling water bubbles from the ground. All other geysers, or geysers depending on your pronunciation, are named after the original, which sadly now has gone quiet, leaving the main attraction to Strucker, which shoots skyward every 5 minutes or so. But it was time for us to leave Reykjavik and head up the west coast towards Ólafsvík on the next leg of our circumnavigation of Iceland. Just Chris and myself were on board for this leg of the trip. The Snæfell's ice cap was prominent on the horizon while still 50 miles distant. We turned into Ólafsvík harbour, which was very commercial, and tied up against a wall of tyres for which there was no charge. We left the following day under a lowering sky. We were soon passing the Latrabrag cliffs, 14 kilometres long and 1,465 feet high. This was the most westerly point of our trip. Headlands are a magnet for rough seas, and we found ourselves battling waves equaling those we had experienced on our approach to Iceland. But this time it was only for 3 hours, and we were more accustomed to the conditions. This was normal weather for boats much smaller in size than Venture. Towering mountains plummeted into the turbulent sea. U-shaped glaciated valleys were often home to a single isolated structure. The way into Tálknafjörður is eased by range markers on the shore. The harbour is protected by a sandbank which almost closes off the fjord, making it very secure. Seaweed prevented the anchor from holding, and the only place we could find to tie up was alongside a fishing trawler, for which we obtained permission. When we left the following morning, the stack from an abandoned Norwegian whaling station stood out on the horizon. There are several of these discarded structures around the coast, and all that is left is a tall chimney and rusted boilers along the bleak shoreline. Once out of the protection of the fjord, we were again exposed to the rough conditions in the Davis Strait, dividing Iceland from Greenland. Conditions calmed as soon as we began our approach into Ísafjörður. The town, huddling at the base of huge mountains, is the jumping off spot for boats heading to Greenland. We were allocated a place on the floating pontoon, which was a rare treat in this part of the world. Isafjorda is served by an airport, and we were joined here by David, who had flown out from England. The rough conditions had scrambled the chain, and we used this opportunity to clear the jumble. There was a strong wind and the weather was cold. Greenland was only 130 miles away, and to the north there is nothing between here and the pole. A severe weather system with the lowest pressure for 10 years was forecast, and we were lucky to be moored in such a snug location. Gulls hung on the strong wind blowing 30 knots even within the inner harbour. Venture 2 was a heavy boat for the small pontoon, and Chris added extra lines from the nearby jetty to relieve the load. The wind remained strong when, after a delay of a couple of days, we got underway once more. The Drangle ice cap dominated the skyline. Our immediate destination was the unsurveyed and uncharted fjord of Longafjorda, which had been recommended to us by a local yachtsman. The magic of Google Earth allows us to make a virtual flight up the fjord, but the real-world version was a place of pristine beauty, untarnished by the hand of man. A major waterfall at the head of the fjord filled the air with a soothing lullaby. As soon as the anchor was down, we launched the tender to see a diminutive venture dwarfed by the grandeur of her surroundings. That evening we celebrated with an excellent dinner of roast pork served with wine. As evening approached, the skies began to clear, and a lingering sunset, here filmed at midnight, settled its silent wings over the fjord. The following morning dawned clear and absolutely calm. Large numbers of beautiful jellyfish trailed their delicate tentacles through the pellucid water. We retrieved the anchor using the built-in nozzle to wash the chain. My solo excursion in the tender along the full length of the fjord to film Venture in her natural environment was a thrilling ride of sheer exhilaration, never to be forgotten. We continued north towards the Arctic Circle.